Welcome to visualeducation.com. I'm Carl Taylor. This show is the emotion of light. We're going to be looking at lighting theory and how light conveys certain emotions, or how it can convey certain emotions in pictures, and why it does that. This is our live desk over here. Here's the guys working on the live desk. Clarice there is going to be assisting. Evie's over there, look, hiding in the corner there. Our model's hiding over there, so she'll be coming out as and when we need her. Let's take a look at this series of images. These are all images from our portrait course. What we're looking at here is the same model photographed with different lighting scenarios, different amounts of light, but more importantly, different styles of lighting. It's how the light makes the image feel. So if we start off with this image here, we've got an extremely soft light, but it has shadow to one side. If we move to the next image, we have shadowless light. So whereas this is soft light, but it's got shadow on this side and shadow on this side of the nose, in the next image, there is absolutely no shadows. We move to the next one. We still have soft light. You can see that the light gradually blends into shadow, but we've predominantly gone with the underexposed side of the image as the main part of the image. The main surface area of the image is actually in shadow. Here we go again, different light. We've got a much more aggressive light where we now have very strong shadows, high contrast, high clarity, more mysterious look to it as well through the density of the shadows. And the density of the shadows is something very, very important in the photography that we're going to be looking at in the practical demonstrations. And then here we move on to what I call multiple pockets of light, where we integrate little blips of highlights in particular places, here, here, on the side of the face, on the edge of the face here. But the majority of the image is kind of mysterious. It sets a sense of mystery. Now, this is an interesting example as well, because we have, again, a point light source on the same model, but in one of the shots, you'll notice that the shadows are much stronger. The density of the shadows, if you look at the strength of the shadow on the white wall and how dark it is compared to the shadow on this wall. The strength of illumination that's going into the shadows has a huge emotional impact on our images. So Evie, if you could come in here, please. Just put your arm up, Evie. Okay, so you can see the shadow, very sharp shadow that Evie's casting from a point light source. So there is a point light source. So this replicates sunlight on a clear day. Now, the interesting thing about using a point light source without a reflector and using it in a bare bulb fashion is that light spreads outwards from the flash and it bounces around the studio. It hits the walls, it hits the ceiling, it hits the floor. And this also creates like an ambient light, almost like a light like skylight bouncing around as well. Shoot. Check the exposure on screen. There you guys can see that on screen. So you can see now that Evie is exposed correctly for what looks like sunlight in terms of the light hitting her and the light in the shadows. Now what I'm going to do while we're filming there is just, if I move the light around, then obviously you can see the shadows position changes dramatically. So if I move the light downwards, then the shadows are going to go up, and we're going to get a very unnatural look to the light because the light is now really low. If we switch to the other camera, you'll see now how low the light is. Now if we switch back to Tim's camera, you'll see how unnatural that looks. So we don't want to be working with a low light source on portrait. We're going to bring that light up again. Let's go back to that camera. Let's bring that light up. We're going to bring it up and up, back to a more natural lighting position, and you can see how that is working on Evie. What we want to do now is demonstrate how we would affect light going into the shadows. How can we increase light in the shadows if we wanted to soften it, or how can we darken it? So the first example we're going to do is about darkening the light in the shadows with what we call negative fill. So I'm going to get a couple of poly boards. Okay, good. And we're going to see if this increases density in the shadows on our model, which it definitely should do. let's take a look at the shot. So everything should be the same with the exposure on the skin, but now what we'll see is the density on the shadows. Let's compare the two pictures. So if we go from this one to this one, you can clearly see the difference in the density in the shadows there. The shadows have also increased on the side of her face. The overall exposure has gone down a little bit as well because the exposure from the ambient light bouncing around the studio has been blocked. We blocked the light bouncing off of this wall coming to our model and the light coming off of the ceiling, floor and studio walls here bouncing into our model this side. So that's how we've taken light away. But what if we wanted the shadows to be lighter? Let's take a look at what we would do in that scenario. Right, let's move these out the way. We should be able to simply use a white reflector board now to bounce more light into this side. If that isn't effective enough, then the other solution is simply to bounce more light around the studio. But what you'd have to be careful of is not to have any direct light hitting the model, because then you'd be introducing another point light source and then you'd be getting a double shadow, which is not what you'd want if you're trying to emulate sunlight, which is what we're doing now. So Clarice is going to hold this here because this looks like it would be the most appropriate place to increase the bounce of light. I'm going to take this shot. So the settings are all the same. Let's see if the shadows got lighter. Yes, they did. Okay, so let's take a look. So here's our latest shot, and then here's the original shot. Here's the one with the darkened boards put in. Let's go back to the original. There's the original shot. Now let's say the art director said to you at this stage, yeah, I like it, looks like sunlight, but the shadows are too dark. Then here's how we solved it. So now we've got a very much fresher feel in that the shadows not only on the wall have been filled in, but on the model they've been filled in. But notice what they've done to the density of illumination on the model's top. So here we've still got some contour, we've still got some shape and texture on that top. When we bring in that additional reflected illumination, notice that top has started to lose contour detail. The feeling of the shot has changed simply because the density of the shadows. This is very, very similar to sunlight. So it's the point light source is acting as the sun, and then the bounce of light around your studio from using a bare bulb is like the light coming from the sky. And the intensity of light going into those shadows is dictated by the amount of bounce of light around your studio. Okay, any more questions?
Yeah. We've got someone asking, how does the distance of Evie from the backdrop affect the sharpness and density of the shadow? And just someone asking, how far away is she?
She's actually about 6 inches away, about 15 centimetres away from the wall. If she moves away from the wall, her shadow will get softer. So move away, keep going. So her shadow will gradually get softer. That is normal in nature, that the shadow will get softer, okay? If, for example, you go back there, I'm going to cast a shadow here across Evie like we did in one of the lighting demonstrations, okay? Now, if Clarice moves this light, rolls it backwards, this shadow will get sharper. So keep rolling really, really quickly, far away, over there, over there. Now that shadow's now got sharper on the edge, okay? Roll it back again towards me, keep going, and now that shadow's getting softer. Okay, because the light is essentially getting bigger. We're going to move from this hard light to a very soft light and look at how we control softer light. Now, here's big softbox. This is the biggest softbox that I've got in my studio. I think it's 180 by 120 Broncolor softbox. Now, many people would use a softbox and they'd use it like that. And that would be considered soft light, but actually it's not really as soft as it could be. It can be much, much softer. Well, I hope you're enjoying this video. We've got some more great lighting tips and techniques coming up in this YouTube video. But if you'd like to get access to hundreds and hundreds of advanced lighting techniques, then why don't you check out visualeducation.com. It's the world's leading visual arts education platform. The video you're watching right now is just highlights from one of our many live shows. And during our live shows, our students can ask questions and interact so that they can further enhance their knowledge of lighting. Join us at visualeducation.com. It can be much, much softer if we bring it in closer to our model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off shooting Evie like that. And then I'm going to bring that softbox in really, really close to show how much better we can use soft light. Then I'm going to show you some alternatives to actually using a softbox altogether. Now, let's see what the exposure is like. Okay, so now the interesting thing about this is that this is what you would think would be a softbox, a soft light from a big softbox. But actually, we still have lots of harsh, dense shadows there. And it's simply because we're not using the softbox correctly, okay? We really, if we want to get the best soft light, is we want to increase the size of this light dramatically. Now, we can't make the light physically any bigger, but we can make it apparently bigger by bringing it closer to our model. So if we bring this light right in, like here, so it's just out of shot. Now, I'm angling it slightly so that I can get it just out of shot. The power is going to have to come down. I'm going to drop it down a stop because we've moved the light a lot closer to the model. So we're now going to turn the light down. I'm now going to take the same shot again. Now let's see what sort of soft light we get. Let's see how that changes. Now we've got soft light, okay? Look at how beautiful the lighting is now on Evie with that. It's a little bit overexposed there, so I could do with taking it down a tiny bit. So we've now got a much more flattering soft light. Right, Emma's got her hand up. Got a question?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions. We've got Christopher here asking if you can discuss the feathering of the softbox. So why is Evie towards the back of the softbox as opposed to the middle? Okay,
let's explain that first of all. Evie is at the back end of the softbox, okay? Because there's no point me having light down this end, because this light will be illuminating the wall and not Evie. Okay, so by having this over here, I'm not illuminating the wall. What I'm doing is extending the distance of light out this way, which means the light reaches further around the face. It wraps around the face, and as it does so, the light intensity is actually decreasing because it's getting further away from the model. So the inverse square law is causing the intensity of light from here to be weaker than from here. So as well as it wrapping further around, it is gradually decreasing in power as it goes around as well. And that's a really, really nice look. So that's why we've done that. Now, all of these images are different to what we've seen before. And what you'll see here is that we're dealing primarily with shadows in these images. So we're using what we call pockets of light. And when we use pockets of light and stronger shadows, we create more mystery. We create more mood, more atmosphere, a sexiness, a desirability to the shots. And using shadows and pockets of light changes the feeling of the shot considerably. So you can see here, intentional use of shadows across the model. The majority of the model here is completely in shadow, apart from the eyes and around the edge of the model. Here again, shadows across the model's face, pockets of light just appearing in certain places, edge lighting around the model instead. Created sort of pockets of light here and here, but when I looked at the final picture, it wasn't as effective as I'd hoped for, so I actually used Photoshop to change it, and I changed it like so. And then I was able to create what looks like light coming through net curtains. And this time we're going to go for mystery with the light. We're going to build the shot up with pockets of light, using mostly shadows to create the image that we need. And we're going to add our first light in. That's about right there. I've lowered that light down quite low. And you can see that light graduating up that grey background for me. I want to soften this light because this is a very dark grey. So where the transition of where the light is finishing and then where it goes to grey is quite harsh at the moment. It would be less harsh if it was lighter grey, but as I say, I don't want to work with a lighter grey. So all I need to do is feather this light a little bit through a little bit of diffusion material, and then the way it changes here, the gradation will change more softly. So what I've got here is simply the barn door attachment that goes on the light, and I've got it with a piece of diffusion material. So I'm going to attach that over the light. I don't need the barn doors. All I need is the diffusion material, which will then feather the light up here for me more. It'll spread it more softly. So I'm going to take a test. We're going to have a look at the result and see the spread of the light this time. There we go. Now you can see immediately the difference in the spread of light. If we go back to the previous shot, look at the difference in the density and the shadows at the upper part of the background compared to now. Right, so Clarice is putting that light on, which is great. I'm going to get that in about position here. So I'm angling it from behind my model to create an edge light on the side of her, a rim light on the side of her. And we're going to have a look at that light now. So this is light number 2 now on Evie. Remember, we only had the background light in. Now we're introducing an edge light. There we go. Now, as you can see, Evie is still predominantly in shadow. But what we want to do is we want to reveal little bits of detail on Evie. So we're using very, very tight grids. Very, very tight grids means a very small amount of light will get through. And we're putting that on the Cirrus light on the L40. And then we can see, we can direct that light, one there. Let's bring another one in here. So we've got another Cirrus light with a fine grid on it. Right, now this one I'm just going to bring onto the face just a little bit there, but that's all I'm going to do. But I'm going to turn that one off first because I just want to add one light at a time. Okay, I'm going to focus there. Shoot, let's see what that little pocket of light does to the shot. There we go. See, just that little glint of light coming on the shoulder. It's a bit weak, okay? It's not quite strong enough, but you can see how it's controlled. Let's take that up half a stop, please. Okay, now I'm happy that that's going to be about right half a stop. Now I'm going to introduce this one. Now we know this one is on power 5.5. If this is the same light and the same power, then we should also set this to 5.5 as well as a starting point. So this light is directed just at the top of Evie, and shoot. And now we should have 2 pockets of light, one on the shoulder, one on the face. There we go, okay? So now we've got this mystery of light. We've got this very small patches of light here, but strong shadows being cast because these are small light sources. So that's working quite nicely for me, but it's lacking a little bit. I think what I'd like to see is another rim light on the other side. So what I'd like to get is another 30 by 120 on this side to illuminate this lovely blonde hair here. We're going to have a lovely bit of light hit the edge of the cheekbone as well now. We take the test shot and we look at the result. That light is far too strong. Take a stop off of that light. So the light on the face, which is this one, I'm now going to take up half a stop as well to compensate for the visual perception of bringing in that additional rim light on the other side. So we're mostly on a rim lighting effect now on Evie, with a couple of tiny pockets of light coming in, one on the shoulder, one on the face, and here you go. So we've now created a much more mysterious, seductive look to the image with this pockets of light and rim lighting and working and dealing mostly with shadow. Right, what we've done now is we put a white brolly on. White brolly is one of the easiest or cheapest modifiers to use. Works like a big softbox or big octabox, and I'm just going to use it as a fill light. I'm going to keep these lights here, keep the background light, and I'm just going for that very soft front fill. Come forwards, come forwards. Right, so I'm looking at the rim lighting on Evie now, and the distance that I have Evie backwards will change the amount of rim lighting hitting her. I'm going to bring her forwards and forwards and forwards to there, and that rim lighting is now a lot thinner. I hope you enjoyed this part 1 of 2 YouTube videos in this series, which are highlights from our live workshop on portrait lighting and the emotion of light. We've just started the shoot on rim lighting, and that will be continued in the next episode, as well as looking at multiple softboxes for portrait lighting on another shoot. So I hope you can join us for the next episode.